Sorry for the handheld video, but I took a little break from work today to play with one of these little boards. I played with this one earlier. I did a video on it. I'll link to it. This is one of these DC-DC battery backup boards that are, I guess you can put it on your router and put a couple of 1080 18650 batteries, I mean. I was coming out with 1080p. That would be wrong. 18650 batteries in there. It can charge them via a USB port, and then it produces, this one I think produces 9 volts out. So it will switch over from the 9 volt input to the battery backed output. So it works as a UPS. But the problem is this one won't charge the batteries except via the USB input, which is kind of dumb. But it seems very well built otherwise. So I bought this one, and this one does appear to charge the batteries. Yeah, I can show you that in just a moment. Now let me just stop and I'll do that. Okay, I've hooked up the meter to that. I was using the scope. We'll just flip it back to meter for a moment, and you'll see it's producing 4.3 volts more or less on what's supposed to be the battery input section. So it's clearly trying to charge the batteries, and I think one of these, maybe that there, one of these might be a battery protection IC. One would hope so anyway. But more interesting is I thought, well, let's put a scope on the output and see what the output looks like. And that's interesting. So we'll just go back into scope mode, and there's what we get. The units are at 200 millivolts, and I've got the trigger so that you can, and this is just about dead on 100 megahertz. So yeah, this is a signal that's picking up from somewhere. I really doubt these little, these are being driven at tens or hundreds of kilohertz, not megahertz. So I do wonder, so what it looks like we're getting here is probably FM. There are a number of stations right around 100 that could be. And then it looks like it almost looks like there's AM encoding on it, right? It looks like there's an AM signal on it, but I don't think that's probably what's going on. Probably what we're seeing is the waveform produced by the power supply's internal oscillation superimposed on a, right around 100 megahertz FM broadcast signal it's picking up from somewhere around here. That's my guess, because no one's modulating AM at 100 megahertz, right? That's right in the middle of the FM band. So, 99.1 is CBC AM around here, and it's pretty strong. So that could be that. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I mean, this is, for my use, this is a pretty noisy power supply. It would be interesting to see what happens if we disconnect. So we'll disconnect that from the power supply, and we'll see that the signal goes away. So who knows? But yeah, this does do as advertised. At the moment, I've got 6 volts going into it. And if we hook this is, I apologize, I'm gonna have fingers. You know what? Let me pause just a moment. Okay, so now I've hooked up the DMM leads to the Handtech to the other sides here. As I mentioned before, we've got 6 volts going in from this little buck converter. I think the power supply that's driving it is 12, if I remember correctly. And if we go over here and we put it into multimeter mode, we see 9.2 volts, right? 9.3 volts. And I believe there's a resistor somewhere on this little board that sets it as 9 or 12 volts output. But this one, I believe I ordered in 9 volts, and that's what it is. So this is a potentially pretty interesting little thing. If you could put an 18650 on here, you could use it as potentially the power supply for a variety of different things. I think you'd want to put some filtering on here, maybe just put a big capacitor on something. I had these out for another purpose, but you know, you could go completely overkill and put a big audio grade Nichikan on it. Right, these are 35 volts there. Intended for chunkier electronics, and this will overpower, but yeah, I don't know. But this is definitely something you'll probably see me playing around with soon. It's an interesting gadget. Thanks.